Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome to BBC News. The Prime Minister is heading to Brussels later today to try to finalise her Brexit deal with EU leaders. Mrs May is hoping the plans will be approved at a summit on Sunday. But the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, has threatened to derail the timetable if he doesn't get further reassurances over the status of Gibraltar. Our political correspondent Chris Mason reports.
Roll up, the Prime Minister doesn't quite say, but you get the picture. The government setting its stall out wherever you might hear, see or read it. But for this weekend at least, the focus turns away from here at Westminster, away from flogging the deal domestically, and the Prime Minister hops over the channel instead to ensure that the EU is fully signed up to it. Mrs May heads for Brussels later to meet two of the biggies of that city, the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, and the European Council President, Donald Tusk. And then tomorrow it is showtime as European leaders gather for the big Brexit summit. But Spain wants more reassurance about the future of Gibraltar.
Y respecto a Gibraltar, les diré que...
Regarding Gibraltar, let me tell you, I insist that the guarantees are not enough, and therefore Spain maintains its veto on the Brexit deal.
And Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionists who prop up Theresa May in Downing Street sound like they're threatening to pull the plug on that if the Prime Minister's plan is approved by MPs.
That agreement was about giving national stability, it was acting in the national interest and delivering on Brexit. If this is not going to deliver on Brexit, then of course that brings us back to the situation of looking at the confidence and supply agreement, but we're not there yet.
You might feel you've heard quite enough about Brexit, but it's about to get even louder still. Chris Mason, BBC News.
Well, the Chancellor Philip Hammond has warned that the UK faces economic chaos if MPs reject Theresa May's Brexit deal. Our political correspondent Leila Nathu is here. What's the context of these remarks, Leila?
Well, morning, Sean. This is the continuing hard sell of the Brexit deal by government ministers today. Philip Hammond on the airwaves warning of the negative economic impact should MPs decide to vote against the deal in Parliament when it comes back. Remember, after this summit, it should just be a formality in Brussels. The main battle will be in Westminster, where dozens of MPs from all political parties have indicated that they will vote against this deal. So some might find echoes of Project Fear, what was dubbed Project Fear during the referendum campaign, of this warnings of economic disaster if the UK Parliament votes against this deal. Here's what Philip Hammond had to say on the Today programme this morning.
I think this deal is a way of Britain leaving the European Union. We've made that decision, so that's no longer in contention. It's a way of leaving the European Union with minimum negative impact on our economy.
So the best of a bad deal, in effect, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Well, look, economics, I'm the Chancellor, but economics is not the only consideration. We also have to look at the political healing process, bringing our country back together, because, as I've said before, countries that are disunited and divided are not successful countries. And if we want this country to be successful in the future, we've got to bring it back together after this process.
Right.
And this deal that is on the table now will protect our economy, protect Britain's jobs and British businesses, British prosperity in the future, while taking us out of the European Union. It is the best compromise that is going to be possible.
So you hear there Philip Hammond saying that basically there is no alternative. That too is a bit of a dismissal to some of the deal's critics, for example, Tory Brexiteers, the Democratic Unionists, who say there is still a chance of renegotiation. Philip Hammond, Theresa May, two very clear, this is the best we're going to get and you better vote for it. The DUP, incidentally, are holding their annual conference in Belfast today, and Philip Hammond, the Chancellor, has been trying to reassure them over their concerns over the deal. They, of course, are very angry about this insurance policy for the Irish border, talking about potentially reopening their agreement to support the government in Westminster should this deal go through. Here's the DUP's Jeffrey Donaldson this morning making his objections very clear.
Here in Northern Ireland, the Democratic Unionist Party isn't put off by the notion that we would fight an election on the basis that we want the best deal for the Union, the best deal for the United Kingdom and the best deal for our economy. And this, at the moment, doesn't represent what we believe is the best deal.
I mean, obviously the focus this weekend is on the summit in Brussels, and Theresa May travelling out there later this afternoon for preliminary discussions ahead of Sunday's big event. But truthfully, the real political battle has to be the Westminster one, doesn't it? And it doesn't seem to be getting any better for her in terms of the numbers.
No, oddly, we find that what we've got this weekend is almost a sideshow. I mean, there is some kind of, doubt whether Spain is going to throw their toys out the pram about Gibraltar and this last-minute sort of wrangling over that. But really, the expectation is that that's all going to be fine, and EU leaders are going to sign this off tomorrow. But Theresa May, acutely aware of what is going to happen in Westminster. We expect the parliamentary vote to be perhaps second week of December, so there's a few weeks to go still, and in those intervening weeks every government minister is going to be out there trying to persuade also their own MPs, a significant chunk of their own MPs, that this is the best deal. So it will be, singing the merits of this deal, and also, as you heard from Philip Hammond, warning of the consequences. But certainly, on the face of it now, we've got dozens of MPs already in public confirming that they are going to vote against the deal, with the opposition parties combined. It's looking pretty dicey for Theresa May when it comes back to Westminster.
A lot of arm twisting to come. Lena Nathy, thank you very much. Well, live to Brussels now, and our correspondent there, Gavin Lee, who is limbering up for this weekend's summit. Gavin, what are the prospects? Is this dispute with Spain seriously able to derail the summit?
Yeah, in brief, they are. If the Spanish Prime Minister doesn't arrive tomorrow, there will be no summit. It's as simple as that. And the European Council officials say, whilst Spain doesn't have a legal veto to say at this point that they would block the deal, it's about agreeing a consensus tomorrow. They won't vote, actually, on it tomorrow. They won't vote until after it's been ratified by the British Parliament, and after it's been ratified by the European Parliament. But this is a major step. The issue is that, how you hold a council special summit when one of its key members isn't there. So officials are saying it won't happen. What's happening right now is that British, Spanish, EU officials are negotiating in the building behind me, trying to work out a solution between the Sherpas, the civil servants, on making Spain happy. And what they want is a text in writing and legalised in some way as part of the divorce bill, either the withdrawal agreement, the political declaration, the declaration for the future, or an extra document saying that any decision on Gibraltar has to go through Spain directly, not just through the EU, and that's what they're working on ahead of Theresa May's arrival here this evening.
And in terms of tomorrow's summit, if it does indeed go ahead, if Pedro Sanchez can be persuaded to get on a plane in Madrid and travel to Brussels, what's the kind of format we can expect? What's the process going to be tomorrow? Is it really a glorified photo call, or is there more substance to it?
No photo call at all. Really interesting tomorrow. That family photo moment, as they call it, where all leaders stand together, not happening. That sign of a handshake moment with the leaders, not happening. Both sides, the EU and the UK, saying it will be sombre tomorrow after 17 months of discussions, and coming to start, breaking up or conscious uncoupling, or however you want to call it. They have to get the balance right, and I think from talking to some British officials on the government side, they're aware that they want also the moment to be seen as positive about the future, but there'll be no champagne corks. I think the Spiegel magazine had that on their headline today. There's no champagne corks popping if the summit happens tomorrow.
Gavin Lee in Brussels, thanks very much. Police are questioning a man after an officer was stabbed outside a train station in London. British Transport Police said the male officer was attacked with a knife outside Ilford railway station. The man was arrested soon after. The police officer has been treated in hospital. His injuries are not thought to be life-threatening. A report from the US government says climate change is likely to cost the country hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century, shrinking the size of the US economy by up to 10% if no action is taken. The report clashes with President Donald Trump's own policies on the issue. He's repeatedly cast doubt on man-made climate change. Our correspondent in Washington, James Cook, has more.
This, say many scientists, is what climate change looks like. In recent years, California has seen bigger, deadlier and more destructive wildfires than ever before. During a cold snap in Washington this week, President Trump tweeted, "Whatever happened to global warming?" Now, his own government experts have answered the question. It's here, they say. Its effects are serious, and without dramatic change, they will be catastrophic. Already, says the report, more frequent and intense storms like Hurricane Harvey, which ravaged Houston in Texas, are destroying property and may damage critical infrastructure such as bridges, power plants and oil refineries. Crop yields and labour productivity will decline. There will be a rise in the spread of tropical disease. The poorest Americans will be hardest hit.
One of the things that's quite striking about the report, for example, is that we could see a future where the southeastern parts of the United States experience forest fire seasons that look like what happens in the West right now. And the real harm of a forest fire is not just the conflagration, it's how people, whether they know how to respond to them. They know how to respond to them if you've been through these seasons again and again and again. That's something that people in the Southeast haven't experienced before, so we know that it could potentially have even greater impact.
The scientists say substantial and sustained reductions in global greenhouse gas emissions are essential, and they do report some progress. But President Trump has taken a sharply different approach to his predecessor Barack Obama, championing coal, oil and gas and rolling back environmental regulations. Without major urgent action, says the report, the impacts of climate change will soon cascade into every corner of American life. James Cook, BBC News, Los Angeles.
National crime agencies issued a warning to organised gangs, which it says are behind a recent spike in illegal attempts to cross the English Channel. On Friday, 8 Iranians were brought ashore after their dinghy was spotted off the coast of Kent. It brings the total number of suspected migrants to have reached the UK this month to 101. Our reporter Keith Doyle has more.
These men were found in a dinghy by a Border Force patrol boat in the Channel yesterday. The 8 men, who say they are Iranian, were taken into custody and interviewed by immigration officers. The day before, 14 people were found in 2 dinghies in the Channel. French authorities found another 11 suspected migrants on the same day. There's been a huge rise in the number of people trying to cross the Channel in small boats. In the past month, 101 suspected migrants have been found, including 9 people found on rocks at Folkestone. 3 boats with 24 suspected migrants, including a toddler, were picked up off Dover and Ramsgate. And 7 men were rescued from a dinghy after making a distress call.
We need to see the Home Office and the French authorities work together to put a stop to this trafficking network. Nearly 100 refugees have been coming across the Channel in recent weeks. It's only a matter of time before there's a tragedy, and that's why the Home Office in particular needs to get a grip and have a plan.
The National Crime Agency says organised crime groups are using these small craft to traffic people, but they're working with the French authorities to stop them. This week, 2 men were jailed for 8 years for smuggling people across the Channel. This is one of the inflatable boats they used. Most people smuggling takes place at ports, but increased security there and the calm weather may be making more people risk their lives by trying to cross the Channel in small, totally unsuitable craft. Keith Doyle, BBC News.
Well, with me now is Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. Tony, thanks very much for being with us on BBC News this morning. The numbers sound significant, but it's not just the numbers, it's the way they're coming across, which is new, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's unprecedented to see this number of small vessels arriving off the Kent coast. The standard route for illegal entrants getting into the UK is concealed in vehicles, but we have done a lot of work in Calais and with the French feeder ports to stop the smugglers getting in through that route, so they are now resorting to increasingly dangerous methods.
Ingrid Parot of the French Maritime Police has been quoted as saying that criminal and mafia networks have been organising the trafficking. So this is different, presumably, from the gangs who operate out of North Africa, for example, and other parts of the region. These are people operating inside Europe. Why are they able to do it with apparent impunity?
Well, the National Crime Agency will be working cross-border and with Europol and the international agencies, but certainly, yes, there is a concern that there is a gang operating on mainland Europe because there's still a huge push towards the UK, and because we've tightened up our border in other areas, then clearly they're going to try something different. But the new nature of this is essentially the maritime threat, which we've always thought we had a maritime threat. We're not entirely sure, but it's always been high risk for us. But it's now actually manifesting itself in these arrivals, and it's highly dangerous.
You say highly dangerous because basically these are dinghies trying to cross the channel, operated presumably by people who don't have any experience of sailing across these waters.
Well, we saw what happened, didn't we, in 2015 in the migrant crisis in the Med with some awful scenes of drownings and so on. And these are very busy waterways. And I mean, the Coast Guard will tell you, the experts will tell you that, you know, this is busy shipping lanes, very rough weather, as you say, potentially hypothermia, drowning. These vessels are not equipped for cross-channel activity. And although we've got our patrols out, it was essentially a search and rescue operation. You know, there is a real danger here that somebody's going to perish.
If this continues, then the risk is high that somebody dies or suffers serious injury as a result of this. But sort of the other aspect of this that will worry people is the relative ease with which people seem to be able to get across. Have we got enough protection on that coast?
Not really, because, you know, the border force covers the ports of entry as well as the areas in between the ports of entry. Now, the resourcing has gone up. It's going up because of Brexit, but it's only getting up to about 2013 levels, which is where I left it when I retired. So, you know, we do need to look at this threat, and there have been recommendations that we have a border security force which coordinates about 15 different agencies with an interest in the coastline. We haven't really got a separate, discrete command structure to deal with that. So I would like to see some further work on that. Yeah.
So in terms of actually being able to kind of pull in other resources without having to kind of constantly negotiate between agencies, somebody needs to effectively have the final say. Is that what you would like to see?
Yeah, I mean, there is a coordination and there is a governance structure around this, and it's intelligence-led. So, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom, but I think that we are seeing now a completely new, well, not a new threat, but certainly a bigger threat than we've ever seen before in this area, which has always been high risk, and I do think we're going to have to respond at some point accordingly.
Tony Smith.
Finally, Mickelson settled it to take the money. He said his heart couldn't take any more at the end, and he'd have to try and calm down now, as we will do before our next bulletin. After 11 o'clock, we'll see you then shortly.
Mike, look forward to it. Thanks very much. Mike Bushell at the BBC Sports Centre. Right, let's return to Theresa May's weekend in Brussels, which begins later today. She's going to be attempting to finalise the EU withdrawal agreement. Let's talk now to Dr. Simon Usherwood, who's Deputy Director of UK and a Changing Europe, an academic body which is focused on Brexit. Simon, thanks very much for being with us this morning. I suppose everyone quotes Churchill, don't they? Isn't this something about it's not the beginning of the end, just the end of the beginning?
Very much so. And, you know, we're here talking about whether we can get to a signing ceremony, not even talking about ratification and approval. So yes, this is still just the start of the process, and I think that we're having the difficulties even at this stage points to a lot more in the way of difficult conversations that we're going to have for many years to come.
So people like Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, who's kind of, as we heard from Gavin Lee a little earlier, threatening he might not get on a plane from Madrid for this summit tomorrow. It's more about putting a marker down for the next stage, which is the negotiations about what relationship we have with the EU after we've left.
I think that's the consensus view. The Spanish have some local elections coming up, so that's a factor. And it's not that this isn't an important issue for Spain. Clearly it is, because it's come up time and again in Anglo-Spanish relations. But I think that the Spanish don't want to be responsible for derailing this process at this stage. And so I think you will see that something will be worked out. You can write a side text to all of the other documents that are going to be put on the table tomorrow and move on. But it's something that we're going to come back to as an issue, despite this bit of grandstanding.
Now, alongside the text of the withdrawal agreement, we've also got this political declaration, which is almost like a guide to the sort of positions or a bit of pre-positioning ahead of those talks. Have you spotted anything in that that's made you think, actually, yeah, this is going to be a bit of a fight when it comes to the trade talks?
Well, the text is really quite open in what might happen, and I think largely the EU's position remains we are willing to adapt to the changing requirements of the UK. I think the EU sense that we haven't yet reached a settled consensus in this country, and so they're trying not to pigeonhole themselves too tightly at this stage. So pretty much any aspect, I think, is going to be subject to the vagaries of the negotiation, the challenges that different EU countries are going to bring up. So we've not only had that Spanish issue, but we've also had the French and the Dutch and others bringing up access to fishing waters, and that's going to be another kind of issue. And I think the EU is going to be less unified in its position in those future talks. So that points, I think, to more complexity.
More complexity, though, but presumably also opportunities for the British to acquire allies at different stages of that process, potentially to get slightly more attractive arrangement than they might otherwise get.
Potentially, but the trade-off is going to be that, unlike this withdrawal agreement, which requires a qualified majority, like a supermajority of member states, that future trade agreement is going to require unanimity. So, yes, you will see some locating of allies, but you've got to keep everybody on board in a very overt kind of way. And I think that this is going to be a difficult job, not least because I think that the UK still hasn't reached that view, that fully formed view about what it wants from this.
Simon Isherwood of In a Changing Europe, thanks very much for being with us this morning. Let's cross to Paris now on the Champs-Élysées. These are the scenes on the Champs-Élysées now. We've got another round of tear gas just being fired in an attempt to disperse protesters. These are people who are protesting at the fuel tax increase that President Macron's government has imposed. These protesters have been seen all over France in recent days. These are the latest pictures live from the scene, but these protesters have been seen all over France in the last few days in those distinctive yellow high-vis jackets. French law requires you, if you are in a vehicle, to carry one of those in case you break down or there's an accident of some kind. And people have used them as an emblem, a symbol of their campaign against the fuel tax increase. President Macron insists he won't back down. He's become less visible in this debate in the last few days, handing it over to his Prime Minister to try and deal with. But it has become a very, very impassioned cause. And as you can see, these protests right in the heart of Paris. The police are trying to disperse them and control the numbers. There have been predictions that there will be tens of thousands of people in Paris today protesting. Clearly the police trying to ensure that no large groups form and disrupt the city centre on a Saturday, but it's fair to say that seeing tear gas being thrown against them is unlikely to improve the prospects of a peaceful outcome to this dispute between the government and the drivers. We will of course bring you more on that story as it develops throughout the day. Now, the search is on for missing footage of Sir David Attenborough, first aired on the BBC almost 50 years ago. Staff at the Royal Institution are asking the public to look in their attics and sheds for any recordings of the Christmas lectures, those science lectures that have been going on now for decades and been televised on BBC Two. Some presented by Sir David. They realised when they searched their archive that 31 broadcasts were missing from their collection. Our correspondent David Sillito explains.
We will have a little protein dance. Okay?
Carl Sagan in 1977 doing the protein dance.
Very good. Can you get a different note on it?
Christopher Zeman and the science of music.
Heart rate 126. You must be calming down, Robert. How do you feel now compared to before? Great.
These lectures have been a Christmas tradition since 1825 and were first broadcast on the BBC in 1936. But not all of them have survived in the archive. Some of David Attenborough's lectures from 1973 have gone missing. There are also gaps in 66, 67, 69, 70 and 71. The Royal Institution wants to put all of these televised lectures online and is asking the public if they have copies of the missing programmes hidden in a loft or stored in a garage. They were television's first ever science programme and they're hoping that some of their technologically inclined viewers might be able to help them complete the full collection. David Sillito, BBC News.
Do tell us and get in touch if you think you might have one of those missing lectures. Now it's time for a look at the weather. Here's Stav Daneos.
Hello there. It's going to be a chilly day for most of us, largely dry with the best of the sunshine across the west, but it will remain quite cloudy and wet across southern England. But the good news is this evening it should start to turn a bit drier across southern areas, and for all it's going to be chilly with that easterly wind. So the rain begins to peter out across the south, should turn a bit dry here towards the end of the night, though the Channel Islands remaining quite wet. Elsewhere, variable cloud, a bit of mist and murk, temperatures no lower than around 3 or 4 degrees, but when we get clear skies, then we could see a patchy frost as temperatures dip down to freezing. So for tomorrow, it's pretty similar today to today, I think. A lot of dry weather around, maybe just a few showers across eastern Scotland, eastern England, but a better looking day across the south of the country. Could even see a little bit of brightness, but there is a chance of some rain across the near continent, returning northwards into the southeast of England. It's going to be a chilly day, and it stays chilly into the start of next week too, but things are gradually turning wetter, windier and milder midweek onwards.
Sometimes being in the driving seat is... She stayed in school. She's a... This isn't just playing sports. This is... the simple act of standing, and you're a... You don't need superpowers to change the world. 100 Women. A season of inspiring and challenging stories across the BBC.
Say daddy. Say mama. What happens in the first 2 years of life lays the foundation for everything to come.
A baby is born with about 50 trillion connections in their brain.
You can see the brainwaves changing in real time.
No, don't touch.
We're about to discover the complexity and sheer genius of how we all grow up.
How you became you. Babies, Their Wonderful World. Starts Monday at 9 on BBC Two.
Hello, this is BBC News with me, Sean Lay. The headlines this hour. Theresa May heads to Brussels this afternoon for talks with top EU officials ahead of Sunday's summit to formally sign off the Brexit deal. Spain says it will not attend unless the last-minute disagreement over Gibraltar is resolved. French police fired tear gas and used water cannon on fuel price protesters in central Paris. The Gilets Jaunes protests have been going on all week against plans by President Macron to put up the tax on petrol. A man's been arrested after a police officer was stabbed outside a railway station in East London. The officer was taken to hospital. The injury is not thought to be life-threatening. The White House has dismissed a government report which warns unchecked climate change will seriously damage the economy and affect human health. The warning is at odds with President Trump's administration's pro-fossil fuels agenda. We will, of course, bring you more in our 11 o'clock summary of those protests in Paris. Now, though, on BBC News, the travel show had a quieter time in the French capital.
This week on the show.
Paris by Tim Snail.
Where is the gear stick?
The gear stick is there. You know?
Seeing Seoul in a hurry. And the EU after Brexit.
Take your place. Get ready. Go!
Oh, this is so tough. My back is about to break.
And there's gold in them there hills. We head to Slovakia to find our fortune.
Yes. Oh no. Miss Lone.
Our travels this week begin in a European capital very familiar to many of us, a city that's become a market leader in clichés.
I'm here in the city of love, but also the city of cars, and plenty of them.
One, though, in particular stands out more than any other in the hearts of the French people, the Citroën 2CV. And this year, she's turning 70. The 2CV was born in 1948 in the immediate aftermath of World War II. The very first prototypes, as well as the very last model and all the others in between, are kept here at the Citroën Heritage Centre in the north of Paris.
Oh, here they are. They've really got character. And this one, you can probably see from the bullet holes, must have been from the Bond film. For your eyes only.
With its unique shape, the 2CV, short for Deux Chevaux or Two Horses, quickly came to fame, and not only in movies. Within a few decades, the car became a common sight on France's roads and in its countryside.
The founding design principle of this car was 4 wheels under an umbrella. The idea of a light car but with really good suspension, so you could drive over a field with 4 passengers and a basket of eggs on your lap. And by the end of your journey, none of the eggs would have broken.
More than 5 million were produced until the last one in 1990. But fans and owners still gather annually to celebrate a car that's been used by generations of French motorists.
I've caught the train out to a suburb on the outskirts of Paris because I've heard out here there's a place where people... I think I found it. Ah, bonjour! Hello, this must be the 2CV Club. I hope so. You must be Christian? Hello. Good to meet you. Look at all these beautiful cars.
Christian presides over a fan club of over 100 members. It's one of dozens across France.
Beautifully done.
They meet every weekend to repair and cherish their babies.
So why is this car so popular? Why do people love it so much?
It's in the French way of life. It's different to all cars. The way you drive it, you're not looking for speed. You're not looking for anything fantastic. And then at the club where we are here today, we all work on our cars and have fun and go out on a little bit of a rally or something like that, you know.
Taking a 2CV on a rally is no easy matter.
This is your rally car.
Christian is currently preparing his for the club's rally trip to Oman next year. Their plan is to drive 3,000 kilometers through the desert.
Donc les voitures sont spécialement préparées. Donc on renforce des parties de la voiture, le châssis. Les contrôles se passent sur les boîtes de vitesse, le moteur aussi. On met une voiture en parfait état pour ne pas avoir de problème dans le désert. Mais on prend quand même la pelle. Il faut quand même une pelle au cas où.
Oman won't be the club's first rally. In years gone by, it's organised dozens around the world.
How many miles in this car, do you think?
Peut-être 50 000.
Wow, 50,000 kilometres. And what about this?
The water.
Is it? Oh, water goes, I bet.
Little Ricard.
Yeah.
Collectors now pay up to €170,000 for the rarest, but there are still plenty around. It's thought about 100,000 still drive on French roads. They're also a fun addition to any weekend in the capital.
Bonjour!
Bonjour, Christelle.
Vincent, good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
This must be it.
This is it. Your turn to drive.
Okay.
Vincent takes guided tours around Paris.
I'm definitely going to need a lesson, Vincent.
He'll even let you drive if you ask nicely. And once you get the hang of it, it's really good fun.
Now, where is the gear stick?
The gear stick is there, you know.
Okay.
So you just turn that if you want to press the first one. And pull, this is first. Okay, then back to neutral.
There.
And push. Second.
Second. This is very unusual.
Yeah, I know that. It's unique.
This might take... please excuse me if we bunny hop up the street.
Driving a 2CV feels actually very different to any kind of modern car.
You can feel the engine under your foot, you know, and the noise of the car, and It's very physical, and it's not a car that goes very fast, but it's not the goal, you know.
It's a very kind of active experience.
Yeah.
There's no sitting back and letting the car do its work. You have to be involved.
Yeah, exactly. And on the left, this is the Louvre Museum.
Is there something, I mean, do you think this is part of French identity?
Yes, it is, of course. Yes, with the baguette and with the stripes.
Well, we've got two over the street. We'll have to stop for a baguette.
Yeah. You're very brave, because driving a 2CV car is not easy. Driving in Paris is not easy. Driving for the first time a 2CV car in Paris is really, really brave for you.
Well, now you're making me nervous. Oh dear.
There are no airbags, the windows aren't electric, and as for AC, let's just say it's pretty rudimentary. But for some reason, the French really seem to love the 2CV. As long as that remains the case, the car they call the Tin Snail will keep ploughing its own furrow on slow lanes everywhere.
And if you're thinking of heading here anytime soon, here are some of the things we think you should look out for in Paris this winter.
Like many European cities, Paris abounds with Christmas markets in December. The biggest is in the La Défense business district, where you'll find 300 stalls selling food, decorations and crafts. Keep an eye on the shop windows too. Some of the big department stores lay on some really stunning displays at this time of year. If you want something a bit different, the Museum of Fairground Arts opens its 12-day annual festival on the 26th of December. You'll be able to see live shows and have a go on old-fashioned merry-go-rounds and games. And Paris Fashion Week is in mid-January, but for most of us mortals, the winter sales are going to be the closest thing we get to being part of it. On the 10th, and you can get pretty good discounts. You might need to get those sharp elbows out for some of the best deals though. The competition can be fierce.
Still to come on the travel show.
Our global guru's back with his pearls of wisdom. This week, seeing the US by train and Seoul in a hurry. And going for gold deep in the hills of Central Europe. This week I've been exploring the French capital. This is the 7th arrondissement, familiar to those of us who've been to the Eiffel Tower. But that's not my destination this time.
So there's a place I really wanted to show you in Paris. I've heard a lot about it and I've never had a chance to see it myself. Check it out. This way?
This is Desrolles, a taxidermist which for almost 190 years has specialised in very high-end stuffing.
This is insane. How did they even get this up the stairs? It's so odd to be able to see creatures like this so up close, and they're beautifully done. It's obviously taxidermy, but the artistry, even on such close inspection, is just, it's perfect.
These animals, all of which you can buy, came mainly from zoos, circuses and farms, and weren't hunted to order. In fact, the hope is that seeing how beautiful these creatures are up close will inspire people to care more about the natural world.
All these animals, of course, are well kept to be a testimony of what is the global beauty of the living. And all this place, for the last 200 years, is one of the steps towards human amazement, amazing sights for people to realize that observation is the key to preservation.
Hello from Malaga. This week I have advice on how to spend 24 hours in Seoul and the tricky business of taking medicines into Dubai. First though, in Florida, the new Brightline high-speed rail link running between Miami and West Palm Beach has increased the frequency to once an hour. The train takes about half an hour between Miami and Fort Lauderdale and another 45 minutes to reach West Palm Beach. And the train operator has also launched a Brightline Select ticket, which promises curated food and beverage items. Next, Jagveer Gailal from Canada's largest city, Toronto, is taking his family to Asia, and they've got a 24-hour stopover in the South Korean capital, Seoul.
What places should we be able to visit within that time?
Good question, Jagveer. And to answer it, I thought we should hear from someone who knows Seoul really well, Hallie Bradley, who writes a blog about the city.
Hi Simon, Hallie here in Seoul. There's a ton that you can see in 24 hours. Head downtown to Gyeongbokgung Palace, the main palace of the Joseon dynasty here in Korea. From there you can check out the Bucheon Hanok Mall, a collection of traditional Korean homes, and then you can easily check out Gwangjang Market, a traditional Asian market that has over 100 years of history here and serves up some delicious noodle soups and dumplings as well for lunch. From there, walk along the Cheonggyecheon stream and check out the Dongdaemun Design Plaza, a great modern addition to the architecture here in Seoul, and end at Namsan Tower, where you can watch as the sun sets and the twinkling lights turn on. I hope you have a great trip.
Next, Gemma from Leamington in the English Midlands wants to book a holiday in the European Union after the UK has left on the 29th of March 2019. She says she can't find the answer to her question online.
Will ATOL and ABTA protection still cover a post-Brexit holiday?
The consumer protection offered by ATOL, the air travel organisers licence, and ABTA, the Travel Association, remains in effect whatever the UK's geopolitical status. But much more significantly for most travellers from Britain, the package travel regulations enshrined in UK law require companies selling transport and accommodation in a single transaction to deliver the holiday as booked or provide appropriate assistance or recompense. In uncertain times, booking a package holiday is a wise plan. If for whatever reason the trip doesn't go ahead, you should get a full refund. Our final question is from Savita Singhal, who's travelling to the UAE with her parents, who are both in their 80s.
I'm not quite sure what medication can or can't be taken into Dubai. Can you help me?
The rules for taking medication into the United Arab Emirates haven't changed. To bring in medicines on the controlled list, which includes some drugs, such as codeine, which are available over the counter in other countries, you need to apply in advance for permission. The Registration and Drug Control Department of the UAE Ministry of Health has a new website where you can apply for permission. For prescription medicines that aren't on the control list, you can bring up to 3 months' supply as a visitor if you have the original prescription or a letter from your doctor. That's it for now, but please carry on bringing me your travel problems and I'll do my best to bring you the answers. See you soon.
Last year, Slovakia in Central Europe welcomed a record number of visitors, attracted chiefly by the breathtaking landscapes and excellent skiing. The mountains there are stunning at any time of year, but they also hide a shiny secret. We sent Kate Buckley to the resort of Hodrusa Hamre to find out more.
Competitors, take your place, get ready, go!
Welcome to the 2018 Gold Panning Championships, a highly competitive where emotions are running high. More than 500 competitors from 30 countries are here hoping to strike gold.
You can take your material.
So, how does it all work? Organizers fill a bucket with sand and hide tiny specks of gold in it, flown all the way from California. Now that I'm up so close to the gold flakes, I realize how difficult it must be because they're tiny. Yes. And some of these sand pieces are just as small. It sounds like an impossible project.
No, it's not impossible.
Then, Competitors race to find all the flakes. Each bucket will contain the same number. For every one you miss, 5 minutes is added to your time.
Would you like to hop into Trough 12?
Eager to try it myself, I've signed up for a lesson with British world champion Daisy Firkettle.
So the first thing you're going to need to do is pour that right into the center of the pan and make like a bit of a mountain. And then you're going to do big flat circles. Okay. Yes, right under the water like that. Perfect. What's really going to help you with this is the specific gravity of gold. It's about 6 times heavier than everything else in your pan. So that means the gold really wants to hit the bottom of that pan and stay there like a rock. A bit more power than that. Give it some welly. Good. That looks like championship panning.
I really hope there's some gold in here.
So shuffle and flatten and get everything in like a semicircle like that.
I think I can see some gold sparkles.
Yes? It absolutely shines like a beacon, doesn't it?
Oh, I'm delighted.
On your first go. Brilliant.
Fairly happy
right,
with that.
Cap on. You don't want to lose those babies.
Thanks so much, Daisy.
No problem.
Just beyond the championship site, there's plenty of evidence we're in a traditional mining town. It's hard to believe, but I've been told there's an estimated 70,000 euros worth of gold hidden within these piles of rocks here. Just shows how important gold is to the area. Beautiful. Richard Canna is a local gold mine owner as well as a panning enthusiast. Richard, how extensive are all the mines here?
Stovky kilometrov dlhých banských diel, množstvo odvalov hlušiny, východov banských diel na povrch.
But life was hard underground. Up until recently, the average miner lived to 40 years of age. Very cold, Richard.
Yes.
It was often said women would marry 3 husbands in one lifetime.
Podmienky práce v bani boli vždy ťažké. Baníci mali zapráčené prúca, mali zničené celé telá a dožívali sa nízkeho veku.
Over at the championship site, the race is back on. It's the women's final and the place is heaving with excitement. And some of these women are so fast, they found their specs within under a minute. With all the flakes counted, I met the new world champion. How do you feel right now?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's been a long week. Yeah, it's a tough competition, so it's good.
But just when I thought it was all over...
22, Kate from BBC. 23, Fedorovsky.
So I've been roped in to competing, and I'm absolutely terrified.
Číslo 1, Marek Mikalec, číslo 2.
Take your place. Get ready, go!
Looks like I've got a fan club. Thank you for the encouragement. Oh, this is so tough. My back is about to break, but the adrenaline is keeping me going. Oh God. Okay, got some gold. I would have thought gold panning was a